Gather round and listen to a tale of brave souls, big and small, where they go on adventures, where they may trip but never fall. Trials, triumphs, and doing their best. Join us, friends, on a stumble quest.
Hello and welcome. You might be interested in StumbleQuest, but see that it's got like 190 some odd episodes. That might be a little bit intimidating, but don't worry, I got you. In this episode, I'm going to go over the entire campaign so far, recapping it just for you. Here we go. Our story begins in the city of Jonstrom, the capital of the Kingdom of Castell, a nation widely known for its scientific advancements made thanks largely to the discovery of ancient runestones and their broad applications. Here, adventurers gathered on one fateful day to try their hand at joining the Adventurers Guild, long known as the Beating Heart of Castell. Among them are four that will be some of the heroes of our tale. Brix Bramblepelt, a normal cat with the power of higher thought and speech, who followed a roguish path. Artorious of Munden, also known simply as Art, an elven paladin who struggles with his holy craft. Oswalt Gravefinger, a gaunt human necromancer and aspiring tailor who carries with them their skeletal friend, Wick. And Knack, too, a thri-kreen druid wearing a fox mask and shrouded in a leafy ghillie suit, accompanied by his badger animal companion, Honey. These four are strangers until they are grouped together for the recruitment trial, an endeavor watched over by three figures. Duncan Howell, a grizzled human man, the head of the guild, and an adventurer of note himself. Saul Finkelstein, a wild and elderly elven man and rune mage who helped with the development of Castell's train system. And finally, Giora Saben, a slim, unassuming, and well-dressed man, acting as a representative of the Castellan government. Solving puzzles, fighting, and nearly dying to training dummies falling in traps, the group manages to complete their trial, experiencing a bizarre, dizzying sensation and odd visions as they warp back to the guild hall, successfully having become guild members. There, they are told the basics of their new vocation and given their licenses by a cheery Zeph bard and guild receptionist called Karine Jolash. From there, they tackled their very first job, finding a watch for a birdfolk fella by the name of Traven Daly. In so doing, they uncover drama between him and his wife, Kosissa, ultimately helping to resolve it and complete their job, leading them to accept another in short order. This second job asks them to identify a mystery artifact for a one Barry Umbridge. Collecting the artifact and bringing it to the guild hall, they discover that it was an ancient puzzle box comprised of interlocked silver rings. It seems to be missing a piece, however, and is thusly unusable. Relaying this to Barry, he gifts the box to them, finding no use for it himself. After a moment of rest at the Frosted Glass, an inn and tavern connected to and partnered with the guild, during which time Brix steals the first of many bowls, the party sets off on their third job. This job would see them board the train, accompanying the Coolio Dawn Master Sun & Son brothers as they work to deliver generator parts to a client in King's Peak, a city far up in the mountains near the border with Dabera, an aggressive, war-hungry nation. During the train ride, things quickly seem amiss, as passengers complain of missing items. Over the course of this journey, the party met Libre Briendir, a young Zeph man with bright yellow bangs contrasting his otherwise black hair as he investigates an item stolen from the Jonstrom Museum, which he tracked to the train. He suspected the Coolio Dawn Master Sun & Son brothers as the thieves, asking Art for his aid in questioning them through the use of a Zone of Truth spell, a feat Art confessed he was not capable of, despite his devotion to the god of the harvest, Havaste. Soon, bandits would assault the train, and the party took action to stop them, resulting in a fierce battle in the cargo cars. Here, Oswalt would, out of desperation, take his first life, melting a bandit with a charnel touch to a sensitive area. Following this, the remaining bandits surrendered or were incapacitated, and LeDrew discovered the item he sought was indeed stashed with the generator parts the Sun and Sun boys were shipping, though evidently it was put there without their knowledge. Arriving in King's Peak, the crew make their way to the local guild hall to rest and part ways with LeDrew and the brothers for whom they had worked. The next day, they were greeted with a commotion as a desperate dwarven fellow by the name of Lockreed Snowbird pleaded for help from anyone who would listen. As it turned out, Lockreed had traveled from a small mining village deep in the mountains called Tremoria and expressed concern about a mysterious chain of events in said mine. Arriving in Tremoria, they quickly met Zestora, an orcish woman and head of the mining operation, who vehemently denied that they needed help from anyone else. It would also be here that the party met Scarlet Willow for the first time, a mysterious red-haired warlock who seemed to be following the path of a powerful magic, leading her there. The party, with Scarlet in tow, soon discovered things were indeed very strange. In the infirmary, miners suffered from strange purplish burns, and one babbled endlessly and incoherently about things beyond anyone's understanding. As they investigated, they found various leads and suspicions from the populace, one of which had them discovering an idol dedicated to the life god, one of the 4 old gods. At night, sneaking into the mine, they discovered growing, writhing silver tendrils in its depths. The next day, a bizarre beast with twisted silver spikes attacked the little village. Parts of the beast looked as though they had been ripped from reality and replaced by snippets of the night sky. Protecting the villagers, Art cast a spell for the first time in his life, albeit somewhat subconsciously, discovering why he was unable to cast holy magics. He is an elemental born, one of the winds, meaning he can only cast wind magic. Upon defeating it, the beast seemed to fizzle out of existence, and the mouth of the mine took on the appearance of a great silvery crown. Additionally, in the aftermath of the battle, Knack, Brix, and Honey, who were touched by the beast, suffered some form of transformation. Brix now found herself able to, whether on purpose or not, see things beyond sight, affecting her mind. Knack found that one of his arms had become metal, a condition he would soon discover was incurable. Honey looked fine, but something was changed within him. Following an apology from Zestora, who gifted them some mysterious glowing yellow ore, the party made their way back to King's Peak, only to find it under siege by a former guild member named Xander Dova. He had bombed crucial infrastructure, including the train station, and took hostages inside the guild. Luckily, Kareen happened to be in town, and helped lead the party to an old, long-disused underground tunnel leading from the town's outer wall to the guild hall, originally built for use during a great war with Debera. Avoiding traps and helping the hostages, the party battled and ultimately defeated Xander and questioned him. In doing so, they discovered he had been manipulated, his mind rattled by a man named Cal, whose only description was that he was exceedingly plain. After a couple of weeks helping to get King's Peak back to working order, the party departed the town, taking the train south. During this ride, Brix slipped into a strange state, where she saw a sky that was not of their world, and a strange entity who seemed to only acknowledge her. However, just as quickly as the vision came, it disappeared. Ultimately, the party returned to Jonstrom, where they received a letter from the director of the museum, Professor Withersby. Their heroics since joining the guild caught his attention, and he sought their aid in investigating a lead on the ancient civilization that once called Castell home, pointing them towards the wilds outside a small town called Coombe to the southwest. After a relatively brief train ride and a boat ride down a river, the party arrived in Coombe and were given a collection of notes from Withersby, which seemed to hint at a secret path somewhere in the woods. Following this, they made their way into the wilderness. During this journey, they discovered a small shack wherein Brix stole a pendant with a heart-shaped divot, and it was found out that one of the decorations on the brim of Scarlet's hat was, in fact, the missing piece of the puzzle box after it seemed to react to it. Oswalt took this and began to work at solving the puzzle. Continuing on, after traversing some twisting paths and harsh landscapes, and due to the stress of confrontation, Honey transformed into a sort of dire badger, but rather than bone spikes, his were twisted silver. He and Knack shared a nice moment together after the stressful transformation. Making their way deeper into the woods, the party soon found themselves amidst some mysterious ruins. It did not seem to be a village, as there was none of the usual infrastructure to be found. As they investigated further, it seemed to be some sort of a collection of laboratories with a temple of sorts at the far end of the area. Inside the temple, they discovered a mural which had partially survived, showing what looked like a war and a group of people separating and traveling abroad. Inside the labs, they discovered designs for artifacts of some kind, as well as a small collection of rods that seemed to attract magical energy. Exploring further, they encountered a family of disenchanters, blue camel-like creatures with elephant-like trunks, who eat magic, the youngest of whom seemed intrigued by the party and followed them. To avoid it disenchanting their gear, the party put a sock on its nose and affectionately named it Socks. A presence in the lab called to Brix, leading her deeper into the facility until they reached what looked like some kind of magic firing range. But where targets might be, instead, was a brightly glowing yellow orb with twisted silver tendrils growing out of it. Brix snapped out of her trance just short of touching it and was, understandably, upset by the ordeal. Oswalt then reached out and touched it, just to see what would happen. As a result, the party felt as though their minds had left their bodies, seeing a black void inhabited only by faintly glowing plumes of purple and blue haze. Shortly thereafter, though, images and sounds and sensations overwhelmed them, becoming a dizzying blur until suddenly it all stopped and they found themselves once again outside of Coombe. Additionally, the puzzle box had apparently been solved, exposing within it a strange orb with a glowing yellow core. Returning to the village, they discovered mobs of people demanding answers from Giora, their local representative, as some kind of disaster had struck the area. They quickly learned that, after touching the orb, some kind of magic pulse swept over the land, and the party had lost 2 weeks of time before waking up in the wilderness. As a result of the pulse, strange beasts began appearing in the area. Among these were elongated, silver-infested corpses that came to be known as hollows, which were evidently coming from an old necromancer hideout outside the village, one that Art had been to 15 years prior with his platoon, and resulted in everyone but him dying. After defeating them and reporting their findings to Withersby, he commissioned them once more to continue their investigation should they find anything else related to what they found, also gifting them an amulet with which they could communicate with Withersby whenever they wanted. The party then took a moment to rest and get their bearings. Discussing everything they discovered, they came to the conclusion that tales from Knack and Art's homelands sounded related, and chose to start first with Art's home, Mundon, an arid empire far to the southeast. From there, they traveled south and found themselves in Oswalt's hometown, Oakward, a place that gave him no small measure of discomfort as he was ostracized and ultimately forced out, left to survive in the swamps when it was discovered he was practicing necromantic arts, which he learned from a book left in his father's collection. Leaving Oakward, they crossed the border into Novum, the land of the Thrycreen. Encountering strange, pearlescent monsters, they once again ran into Libra, who found himself in the area following a lead on the presumed thief from the museum, a Cal Aldor. They also met a young, studious Thrycreen woman named Doki, who hit it off with Knack. Finally, they made it to Docrai, the capital of Novum and bustling port town. But with the emergence of the strange creatures, everything had been shut down, causing them no shortage of trouble and leaving the party with very few options as far as getting to Mundon. There, they also encountered Brett and Cyril, 2 people from Oswalt's childhood who tormented him back then and even tried to turn public opinion against the party in the present. This would not work out well for the 2. Deciding to help out with the creatures, the party investigated and soon discovered an old wizard's tower in the wilderness outside the city, with golems patrolling it. Knack summoned monkeys to distract the golems, which was effective, but one of them was destroyed to such a degree that a permanent monkey-shaped crater was left in the earth. Inside the tower dwelled a kindly older woman, with a mage hand replacing a missing arm. Her name was Damia, and she had been experimenting on dying or injured wildlife, trying to find more effective ways to save lives. Her experiments were failing, however, and she was leaving her golems to deal with the leftovers, which they did by burying them in a mass grave near a lake, with some of them tumbling down into the waters. What she did not know, however, was that some of those corpses would reanimate into the strange pearlescent monsters after some time. She sincerely apologized and explained that she had gotten some experimental materials and support from a Cal, who wore a brooch which it was later learned identified him as a member of a cult known as the Church of the One God. Things were not so neatly resolved in Docrai, however, as some corpses, swept away by the currents, landed in the ocean and were eaten by a gigantic aquatic entity known as Gravefinger, the World Crab, infecting it. A large-scale effort spearheaded by the party was launched and Gravefinger was defeated. Grateful, Dockmaster Graka, Doki's mother and leader of Docrai, lent the party a ship, a relic that was passed down through generations, called the Cloud Chaser. As well, a navigator, Laka, was tasked with working with the party to help them get to Mundon. Libra wished them luck before they set off to Mundon, as he intended to continue to investigate Cal and the Church of the One God back in Jonstrom. Soon the party discovered that the Cloud Chaser was in fact a haunted ship, with the lingering spirit of its original builder tasking them with fulfilling his failed dream, making the ship fly and reaching a place that was only rumored to exist, high in the sky. The party briefly made landfall on a strange island which made everything picturesque and fun, inhabited by strangely attractive people. this was not all it seemed, as a distressed man by the name of Gary Cant pleaded for help. Breaking from the spell, the strange people turned out to be pillars of sand. The party explored the island and found a cave wherein dwelled the Holiday Hydra, a mythological being who agreed to free them from the island in exchange for Oswalt's hat and for a favor which they said they would claim later. Leaving the island, Gary Cant had apparently already died long ago, leaving behind only his bones once they had escaped the island. Mysteriously left with them was also a sparkling bottle of sand. At last, after a long journey at sea wherein Knack fell victim to sea madness, the party made port at Emperor's Cradle, the port town at the northernmost point of Munden. Art explains that the tale they are pursuing is that of the Wanderer, a revered figure in Munden culture who appeared a long time ago from far, far away, carrying with him a mysterious artifact and plagued by a madman. In order to carry the goods they'd need for their travel, Scarlet, who had transformed into Will, their masculine alter ego, conned a man named Jim into giving the party his illegal pet elephant, Peanuts. Peanuts in tow, and after a brief stopover in a tavern, the party made their way south into the desert, led by Art. Camping, they find themselves plagued by strange dreams and discovered a bizarre hum of magical resonance as though two similar wavelengths were coinciding. Unable to find the cause, they pressed on, along the way helping an elderly man who then gifted an old life god totem to Knack, and eventually finding themselves in the capital, Munden City, just in time for the beginning of the Harvest Festival. The party, needing more information, decided that the next logical stop was the Grand Cathedral, the center of Munden City, and indeed the center of all of Mundonian culture. Art, having disappeared for all intents and purposes 15 years ago, felt uneasy approaching his old home, and so Brix was sent to the Grand Cathedral in stealth to find a way in. This ended up being a plant, which Will used to transport via plants, carrying him, Brix, and Art inside. Inside the library, Art encountered his old childhood friend, Larian, who was beyond ecstatic to see him again. Not knowing why, but understanding that Art did not want his presence known, Larian agreed to keep things quiet and proceeded to go about his business preparing for the festival. Continuing their investigation of the library, they discovered a secret room, wherein they found evidence of some deeper, older connection with the Church of the One God, pointing towards the old god of death. As well, they find tales of the Wanderer that Art had never seen. These detailed the Wanderer apparently having worked and built something atop a mountain which overlooked what would one day become Munden City, with a mysterious pillar of light at its center. Another would see the Wanderer speak uncharacteristically about a strange city and mysterious winged beings, all while making light of the elven new gods. Equipped with this information, the party visited the Wanderer's temple, a place that was once the mysterious figure's home, but not before the crew had ransacked the office of Orim, the High Cleric of Havaste, the most powerful man in all of Munden, and Art's father, stealing an enchanted pair of gloves in the process. Once at the Wanderer's temple, they discovered strange etchings in an old work desk which resembled the mural in the ruins near Coombe. However, something seemed off about each image. After solving the desk's puzzle, it transformed into a small ornate box, with the lid depicting a strange, winged creature with rays of light shining behind it. Inside was an old runestone, sheets that detailed an extremely complex kind of magic seal, rune designs, and sketches that seemed to indicate certain locations. Following these clues, they find themselves in different areas. First of all, Crimson Peak, a mountain of red stone overlooking the city. There they found another runestone deep inside a cave after having solved some puzzles, as well as an array of pillars up at the top of the mountain with empty slots which fit the runes. Then, the stone tunnels, a treacherous monster den, where they fought a drake and Honey developed a taste for draconic blood, and where they found another runestone to match the one from the box. Next, the ruins of Old Munden City, where they encountered a gang of bandits led by someone called Dorige, who, after being soundly defeated and maimed, was cursed by Will to only ever see everyone around him as having his own mutilated face. The party made off from here with a new pair of boots of speed, an amethyst brooch, and yet another runestone. Finally, they made their way up to the top of Crimson Peak again, inserting the runes into the pillars and revealing the path forward, directly in the center of the Imperial Palace. Will tried to leave the party, expressing some melancholy and a desperate need to find the relic that the Wanderer carried, believing it to be a legendary weapon called the Star Killer. Art ultimately talked him down, and together the party ventured back into Munden City in the midst of a sandstorm. However, things did not go smoothly, as they had evidently been expected and were ambushed by Mundonian paladins and guards. Coming out victorious, the party continued on and snuck into the palace, trying to find their way to the relic, only to once again face Mundonian forces, only this time they were defeated and apprehended. All except for Brix, who managed to escape. Orem expressed suspicion of the party and disappointment in Art, before knocking him unconscious and throwing all of them in the dungeon. Sometime later, Brix snuck back in, down to the dungeon and freed everyone, but not before it was revealed that Larian had been caught, having apparently been acting suspicious and interrogated about interlopers, then thrown in the dungeon, having been thought to be in league with them. Evading recapture by the guards, the party and Larian fled, discovering a sigil on the floor in the center of the dungeon that strongly resembled the one on the floor in the Wanderer's Temple. In a flash of light, they found themselves in a strange structure, with glowing markings all over the walls and floor. Exploring this strange place, the party discovered that it was being powered by an array of ancient machines. Here they also learn of something called the conduit, though the specifics remained vague. Collecting power cells from each machine, after solving puzzles and overcoming obstacles, the party was able to access an elevator in the center. There they found an ancient mummified person on a sort of throne, which all of the strange markings led towards. Embedded in the throne was an odd shield with a protruding core that glowed the same strange yellow as many other objects they'd encountered thus far. Coming to life, the strange mummified person fought them with manic fervor, and after it was defeated, the entire structure began to crumble. The shield, evidently a magic amplifier, was used in conjunction with Sox's ability to warp to escape the crumbling place. Having found themselves in the middle of the desert, the party traveled northeast until they found themselves in a town called Drake's Pass. They got their bearings and, after a night of chaos caused by Knack experiencing desert madness and learning he can shape change from an elephant back to normal in the space of a fraction of a second, discovered a Church of the One God presence, being investigated by local guards. A battle ensued, and one of the cult leaders, an elf named Bellinor, was apprehended and their weapon confiscated by the party, a morning star made of twisted silver with a glowing yellow core. It was later discovered that this core is an explosive device of some kind. They also learned that the Church of the One God intends to spread their God's light to everyone. What exactly that means, they did not quite learn. However, it did not sound good. Using message spells to communicate with Laka and Damia, the party then made their way to a coastal town called White Cliff Landing. Meanwhile, Larian expressed concern for his family, his wife and childhood friend of Art, Mal, and his son, whom he named after Art. While waiting for the ship to arrive, they aid Peg, the proprietor of a failing bar called the Salty Dog, getting it well underway to succeeding. They also develop disguises and alter egos as they learn of a paladin force from the capital sweeping the area to find them. Knack becomes Duncan Coleslaw. Oswalt becomes Thomas Fjord. Will becomes Chuck Fry. Brix becomes Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Art becomes Kitty Simps. While laying low in another pub called the Cod's Net, they give rise to Duncan Coleslaw's supposed pineapple business through a group effort, thus dooming the Cod's Net into financial ruin by striking a deal with them that cannot possibly happen. As Paladin forces began to close in, the Cloud Chaser suddenly appeared in the bay, and the party narrowly escaped both the forces on foot and the 3 Mundonian Navy ships. Sailing around to the southwest of Mundon, they part ways with Larian, having reunited him with his family and making sure they had passage to an island nation called Gaddingford. Needing supplies before making their way back to Jonstrom, the party stopped in the Sundrian provinces, eventually finding themselves in a place called Rotwood, inhabited by goblins. Here, the party turns in various odds and ends to lighten their inventory and also commission gear from a craftsperson called the Bonesmith. In the woods surrounding the small goblin village, they encounter many shoddily made traps. In the village, a goblin named Scaff Holding is accused of having built them, with the general consensus being that Scaff is not to be trusted. While awaiting their gear to be made, the party splits. One half confronts Scaff, quickly learning that he is an inventor of high caliber and did not make the poorly constructed traps in the woods. It became clear rather quickly that Scaff had been trying to modernize the community, and the goblins didn't like that, and so went about trying to sabotage his attempts and get him either killed or kicked out of the village. The other half of the party stayed behind, and, with Will unveiling their dryad form, creates a distraction so that Brix may steal from the villagers, acquiring a magical sheath in the process. In the end, the party got their supplies and recruited Scaff, who then made himself useful by beginning to work on the ship and its flying mechanisms. At last, the party returned to Castell, making port in a place called Doveport, where they spent a single night, and Knack created absolute mayhem, releasing dozens of wild dogs into the streets, an event that led to a petition to rename the town Dogsport. After that, they finally made it back to Jonstrom, reporting their findings to a very eager Withersby, who paid them well for their work and awaited their next update. As well, they commissioned a shady undercity blacksmith called Dusk to turn the glowing yellow ore into enchanted equipment. At the guild hall, they once again meet Libra. He told them about how he'd come across a murder case in their absence from Castell, and that the victim was Barry Umbridge, the one who had given them the puzzle box in the beginning. Evidently, the murderer was working with the Church of the One God, and was sent after Barry to retrieve the artifact the puzzle box contained. He explained he remained in the city, looking into whether there were still any church members in the area, now having learned of a series of secret tunnels that spanned the city via his work on the murder case. Exploring the Undercity, the party and Libra do indeed discover a church presence, culminating in their donning their disguises once more and infiltrating a party in an inn called the Den. There they see Cal for the first time, confirmed by Damia, who pointed him out in shock. They confronted him with Brix having injured his arm. He seemed unfazed, though, and had many layers of illusions cast, meaning the more the party tried to attack him, the more they were in danger of harming civilians that surrounded him. Cal demanded that they hand something over called the Ignition Orb. They refused, but Cal expressed that they would, one way or another, before disappearing in a flash of yellow light, leaving behind only a desiccated pile of bones where he once was. Following this, there was chaos as civilians fled from the den, and the party caught a single cult member. They tried to interrogate them, but a spell was cast to melt the cult member's brain before they could speak. Returning to their rooms at the guild hall, Will discovers the spell-amplifying artifact was stolen, and, in the course of investigating the disappearance, discovered that the communication amulet from Withersby was in fact a spying device connected to the church. Going to his office at the museum, the party battled who they knew as Withersby. The fight ended with Withersby's body briefly stretching out to unnatural proportions, before there was once again a yellow flash, and he lay there, back to normal proportions, but completely exsanguinated. Before other museums could come and see and assume the party had killed the director, the party took Withersby's body and fled, using a summoned horde of chimps as cover. Gathering their belongings and moving to a new inn, the party, via Oswalt's magic, interrogated Withersby's corpse, learning that the person they knew was never actually Withersby, but instead Cal puppeting his body somehow. They also learned of a hidden room in Withersby's home, detailing more on the ancient civilization whose relics they and the Church of the One God seem to be after. Investigating the home, they find that Cal must have been puppeting Withersby for quite some time, given the state of the place, before discovering the secret room and only narrowly avoiding setting off traps. From notes gathered from the hidden room, they learned that there were not one but two major wars leading to the collapse of the Ancients. One was fought against some force referred to only as the Outsiders, and the other was a civil war fought over some kind of relic or relics, ultimately leading to the ancient people vanishing. As well, on either side of the canyon inside which Jonstrom is built, there is apparently an artifact called an anchor, which seems to operate similarly to the rods the party discovered in the Coombe ruins. It draws magic towards them, or locks it down. Damia's role complete, she left the party, and their business in Jonstrom complete, the party heads back to Doveport. From there, the party sets sail towards Bel, a nation far to the north where Knack's druid glade resides, following a lead that he has from his time growing up there, similar to Art's Wanderer legend. Along the way, Scaff managed to get the ship to fly, but only for a short while, drained an entire power cell from Munden in doing so, proving it still has a ways to go. After that, they stopped at Noble's Perch, a small island inhabited solely by the extremely wealthy, to get some winter gear in preparation for their journey up north. Here, Oswalt met a fellow tailor intrigued by Oswalt's work by the name of Miles Sandalo, who insisted they meet again when their business is finished. Knack, Brix, and Will, in disguise, once again found a mark to con out of all their money. Now equipped with winter gear and ill-gotten gains, the party sets sail and heads north. Over the course of this journey, Socks starts playing with a stick, jumping in and out of portals as he does so. It's soon discovered that he's traveling to and from a mysterious place filled exclusively with birch trees. Will and Art go over Withersby's notes, gathering more information, learning about strange installations around Jonstrom called anchors. Brix and Scaff investigate a shipwreck, only to discover that it was in fact a gigantic mimic and barely escape with their lives. Oswalt undergoes stabbing practice, and Knack, using the aforementioned Birch Dimension, completes the ritual with the Life God Totem, unlocking its true potential and upgrading his Githka into a legendary weapon. And that's about where we are now. Minus some goofs and gaffs here and there, you're all caught up. If you'd like to expand your knowledge on the world, you can find the encyclopedia on the website. It's still a work in progress though, so be warned. You can also join the Patreon, which gives you access to special channels in the Discord, wherein lie some tasty nuggets of lore, and a whole novel detailing what Libra had been up to between the party seeing him in Dockfry and Jonstrom. But yeah, that's the whole story so far, and I hope that you stick around and follow us from here. Things are getting pretty wacky. Thanks for listening. Bye!
Well, hey everybody! Thanks so much for listening to this new episode of StumbleQuest. Our theme is Struttin by Louie Zong, with some other music by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. And you know, this is a bi-weekly podcast, twice a month, and we'll catch you again in 2 weeks on March 18th. Catch us at StumbleQuest.com for more information about the show, cast, and characters. We are at StumbleQuest on Blue Sky. Come check us out there too. And if you're feeling a little sociable, you'd like to join the show's Discord, the link is in the episode description. 5-star ratings and reviews mean so much to us. And it would be super helpful for the show if you could give one to us on iTunes specifically, but anywhere really. If you've already been so kind as to do that for us, maybe tell a friend you think would vibe with us. We'd appreciate it. We are also at patreon.com/StumbleQuest. And if you are on an Apple device, please consider subscribing through your web browser rather through the app in the Apple App Store, which is a mouthful to say, even to think, so just free yourself from it and go to the web browser. And speaking of Patreon, I have so many patrons that I would love to say thank you to. So I'm going to do so right now. Thank you so much to Andy Animates, Crispy, Eldrasar, Elfheim, Fire Seal, John Bridaham, Kellan, Lemon Wiki, Lorenzo Hall, Mad Hatter Plush Artist, Mr. Peacher, Mike Provenzano, Shaz Hands, Silver, Sleepy Turtle Cat, Striker, The Tommynator, Wiles Paleo, Will the Smoshy, and Mickey. Thank y'all so much. Your support helps us bring every new episode right to you. This episode was edited by myself, Allie, and you can find me at YouSeeTheHat on most socials, including Blue Sky. And tune in next time, folks, where we get back to the gang's antics for another 200 episodes. 1,000,000 years. Whichever comes first.